All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM. Joining you as usual. Well, actually, I was going to say as usual from a sunny San Diego, but we're actually raining today, which is a nice change. And today I'm delighted to be joined from, as the Americans like to say, across the pond, Geoff Ketterer, who is in beautiful Cornwall in the UK. How are you doing, Geoff?
I'm doing well, thanks, mate.
Yeah, and Geoff has been worked for years with teams inside of companies like Seventh Level and Closer.io, and knows a thing or two about a thing or three even about fixing a broken team. And as a fractional sales manager, has helped hundreds of businesses scale their business with a no BS approach. And we're going to talk about leadership and development. But I'm fascinated of the work you've done, Geoff, with fixing a broken team and transforming them into a sales machine. Maybe we
Mhm.
start off by what are some of the traits or characteristics of a broken sales team? How do I know if my sales team is broken, apart from the fact that maybe I'm not selling as much as I would like to?
Yeah, it would be falling below KPI, negative culture, people not looking forward to coming to work, people not being willing to pick up the phone as often as they need to, internal politics, bickering, all of those things play into a team that is not cohesive, probably not happy,
Mhm.
which causes ripple effects and ongoing issues for most people.
And you mentioned the falling below KPIs. I mean, I feel that sometimes that KPIs are not that well defined, or they are not the correct ones, or maybe teams are still using old KPIs. So I
Mm.
presume one of the things that you focus on is looking at those KPIs and making sure that the correct ones.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a few really important ones. Obviously, close percentage is
Mhm.
always going to be right at the top of that. But there's other things internally, things like from an SDR perspective, speed to lead. I forget which study it was recently that released the kind of playbook on this, but they said each minute after 5 minutes that lead has no contact exponentially, and by exponentially I mean 6 minutes it'll go down to maybe there's a 60% chance of that lead becoming a client. At 7 minutes that drops to maybe, there's a 40% chance.
Mhm.
And if you're talking over 24 hours before that lead has a contact, it, you'll get some across the line, but exponentially the chances of them going from a lead to a client just slips away. So typically the KPI for that sort of stuff is you've got to get to that lead inside of 5 minutes, and that's where you need very dialed in systems and very robust processes to make sure that every lead is able to be captured inside of that time frame.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you is, okay, if you're having a speed to lead issue, what are some of the things you can do to fix that? I mean, what's the root cause of that anyway at the beginning?
The root cause of it is probably lack of processes, internal processes. So for the teams that I work with, what we do is we have a system set up, pretty simple system. Maybe you're using some form of type form or woo form in order to collect data coming through a funnel from somewhere, because obviously
Mhm.
a lot of what I do is in the online space. It's really easy to set up a zap, meaning Zapier, right? And
Yeah.
what you do is you have that lead zap through straight into an internal channel, and you have all of your SDRs in that channel. And if the SDRs are trained correctly, they're going to know that the leads that are popping through there in real time are going to be the hottest leads. So the SDR team should be hungry to be able to jump on those leads. And for a lot of the teams that I work on, we've in fact got it down to sort of 60 to 120 seconds before that
Wow.
lead gets a call. And so really easy, woo form or type form, simple zap into an internal Slack channel. All of your team are in that Slack channel, and that way we can pick the lead up really quick.
Yeah, so process is your friend, because that's one of the things that you often, we've been preaching for years, that at the end of the day, like the best performing sales teams, large or small, are the ones who have got the processes right and are understand process and are process driven.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, and
funny. There's a sorry, mate, I cut you off. There's a story. My sister was looking at not wanting to be morbid, but just before Christmas, for reasons that will go unmentioned, she was looking at an online crematorium, right? Nobody's
Mhm.
ill, nobody's dying, it's fine.
Sure.
But she obviously filled out her details, and within about 5 minutes, she got a call from the crematorium, and this was right before Christmas. So she wasn't overly enamored with getting a call just before Christmas, but she was impressed, and she said, "You know what? That's isn't that good customer service?" Even though she didn't want to have the conversation there and
Mhm.
then. So a lot of the time, I find that teams can be of the opinion, well, we don't want to contact them too quick because it looks desperate. And in
Mhm.
actual fact, the opposite is true. The faster you can get to that lead, the more impressed they are by the efficient systems inside of your business, and it just makes you look more professional. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, that's a good one, yeah. And getting an immediate call from a live person. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Unusual though it may be for that company.
And then you mentioned like negative culture. What breeds negativity within a sales team?
Wow, I mean, you could probably talk for hours just on
Sure.
this, but a few main things that breed negativity. Number one is the culture can be fueled by a person on the team with a big ego.
Mm,
And you and I are in sales, right? So we know that there's a lot of ego that exists in
sure.
sales, and that's fine. It's okay to have some ego, but so long as that person can take that ego and apply it to wanting to push the team forwards. Where I think a lot of people fall down is they will leave an ego unchecked, and that can breed bad vibe amongst the team.
Mhm.
Like I said, so long as you can wrangle it in to some extent and make sure that that person is still focused on the success of the team. So very much like a military unit, we're all individuals, we all have our roles, we all have our jobs to do, but at the same time, we're kind of all pointing in one direction and we're focused on a singular goal as a team. That's one of the main reasons. The other reasons can spill into poor marketing, bad show rates.
Mm.
You could go on and on and on. But the big one in terms of culture is making sure that you have everybody on the team rowing the boat in the same direction at the same time, focused on a team goal as well as individual goals
Yeah.
too.
And I feel like as you saying the team analogy there, I feel sometimes that we don't respect all the different types of skills needed and the different roles, right? We tend to focus on, as you said, I mean, if you've got the guy with the big ego and the loud who happens to, bring in a lot of business or something, kind of he or she, we default to that person as opposed to looking at also what are the skills and strengths of the other people that we need in order to drive this forward, and if you like, celebrate them as much.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always going to get a mix of personalities on any
Mhm.
team, sales
Yeah.
or otherwise. And I think it's important to understand from the psychological aspect, people tick differently.
Yep.
Some people need to be challenged. Other people do not thrive well in an environment where they're challenged. And the job of the manager is to some extent, be able to handle each individual personality on its own merit,
Mhm.
which can be a little bit like attempting to herd cats, to
Yeah.
quote Jim Rohn. But it is important because not everybody responds to the same level of praise or the same level of dressing down, for want of a better phrase. You've got to really be able to work with multiple personalities,
Yeah.
in a singular environment, which is not an easy task, but it
Well,
is
it's not,
important.
and it's getting more difficult now because we have so many different generations in the workplace. I think we have the most
Yep.
generations in the workplace than ever. But what you say there, it's like I mean, most people know that with sports teams, we often hear is like this person needs to get, this person needs to be really dug out of it and kind of shouted at and motivated if they're not playing. This other person needs an arm around them and to be kind of consoled a little bit to get the best out of them. So yeah, it's not a one size fits all. So when you come in then and you're working with the team that's not functioning, um, how do you start that process of removing the negativity?
The first thing I always focus on is I want team meetings, and I want everything we do as a team to be fun. We always
Mhm.
talk about KPIs and
Yeah.
targets and numbers, and it's all data, and that's all well and good, and that needs to be in place for sure. But if you've got a team that do not enjoy their sales team meetings, if you have a team that go, oh, here we go again, that's the biggest problem you'll face. You want your team to enjoy the team meetings. You want those meetings to be able to celebrate internal wins of the team. You want to be able to celebrate wins for your clients. You always want to start the meeting on a high note, and you want to make sure that each meeting there's a little bit of fun aspect. And you don't have to break out digital monopoly, but
Mhm.
just okay, a little bit of fun, a little bit of hazing if that's what you like, just gentle. I'm not talking about anybody
Yeah.
being berated, but make those meetings fun. Make sure people enjoy the meetings and that they look forward to attending them. And I've worked on so many teams where the team meeting in the morning was literally just, right, let's go over yesterday's numbers. You're all terrible, go out there and do better. So you start your day like, oh, okay, great. What am I doing all of this for? I feel useless even if I'm not.
Yeah.
So yeah, really trying to install a culture of, yes, we are here to perform and we're here to hit numbers, but let's have some fun in the process.
Yeah, yeah, and no, we totally agree, and we believe actually, to be honest, is that when you go forward and you sell, and if you sell with a win-win mentality, like a win together mentality, that it should be an enjoyable experience for both the seller and the buyer. Why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't that be
Absolutely.
an experience? Why shouldn't that be an enjoyable experience? Why does that have to be a fraught or confrontational experience? It shouldn't be.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I did a team training with one of the teams I work with today, and they were at the end of the call, and it's a coaching offer. Okay, so that's a
Mhm.
little bit of a different sell. You really
Sure.
do have to advocate for people. You have to kind of hold them accountable, and obviously they need to be in a position where your offer is the right fit for them. But a
Mhm.
lot of the time in that environment, they get in their own way. And you could just sense at the end of this call review that the closer, as we say in our world, and the prospect, there was just so much pressure, so much tension. And I
Mm.
said to the closer, I said, well, just have a little fun.
Yeah.
Whenever I used to do a temp check, right, like a 1 to 10, if that's you and me, John, it would be, so John, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you see this fitting in, or do you see this working for you? I always used to have a bit of fun. And it was always, where do you see yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? One being, this has been a complete waste of an hour of my life, and I'd rather fly to Jeff's house and punch him in the mouth if I have to listen to 5 seconds of his stupid accent anymore. Or 10, this is exactly what you need. And you'd see the person you were talking to smile and they laugh a little bit and they'd be like, I don't want to punch you in the face, Jeff. You're good. And we could just have a little bit of fun in the moment. And I think that the close is often perceived as this
Yeah.
super pressurized environment. And in actual fact, you will get far more buy-in from the people that you're speaking to if you just learn to have a little fun with it. It'll be a nicer experience for you. It'll be a nicer experience for them. And you'll probably close way more just because there's a bit of levity in the conversation rather than this super pressurized environment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's a great example that you use there. It's just kind of letting that pressure out a little bit and allowing it to get back to just two human beings, like having an experience. What are some other areas that I mean, especially nowadays, because we have obviously have technology, we've got AI coming in and all of that. What are some other ways that you help focus sales teams and get them performing? Because I mean, obviously there's issues that you have to fix, but
Yeah.
then once you fix them, then you got to get them performing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of the thing that's not often discussed is how important culture is.
Hmm.
And not just culture in terms of having fun, but culture in terms of making sure everybody is feeling like they're part of a unit. You to quote one of my mentors, everybody needs to be in the same boat, rowing to the same destination at the same time. We've all got a singular goal in mind. That helps a lot in terms of keeping people focused. Outside of that, you want to make sure that when you're setting targets for your team, and this was a question that I had at the start of this week. Somebody said, well, how do my team are terrible at follow up. How do I get my team to do follow up? And I said, well, you just make their KPIs based on the fact that they have to do follow up, otherwise they can't hit it.
Hmm.
And then there are consequences for not being able to hit your KPI, right? So if one individual on the team is targeted with 20 units this month, through inbound marketing efforts, you want to make sure that they can probably do 15, if they're good and they're selling at the right pace. But then the remaining five have got to be able to come from activity.
Mm.
So rather than you being on top of the team, constantly cajoling and coercing and whipping and trying to bribe with cupcakes or whatever. It's much better to give them a target that absolutely requires that they do the things necessary, like follow up and outreach and all of that kind of stuff. Otherwise, they don't hit their target. And then the biggest mistake outside of that that a lot of teams will make is that they won't have any consequences for not hitting target.
Mm.
You have to have consequences, otherwise nobody's going to do it in the first place. So everybody on the teams that I work with understand what their KPI is, they understand what their numbers are, and they know what they have to do to hit that number, or there's going to be a conversation. So
Yeah.
it's actually a lot easier to get a team to start performing and getting them to do the tasks that you want them to do without having to feel like you're constantly whipping them, which is part of what we teach to the teams that we work on is, get the team to function by itself, which
Yeah.
you can do with some basic strategy for sure.
Yeah, no, obviously the accountability piece, because yeah, if you give people the tools and then you say, okay, I've given you the tools, I've given you everything, now you're accountable for delivering against it.
Mhm.
It's interesting what you say about the no consequences, because I do think that that is something that is quite pervasive among sales organizations, because I think often sales managers and sales leaders, we know how hard it is to recruit new salespeople, right? I mean, I've
Yeah,
never come across anybody who's ever told me, "Oh, easy to get new salespeople." It's normally the hardest thing to recruit salespeople. So we have a tendency then to be a little bit too forgiving of some of the folks that we have, because we just think, if I just hold on to them a little bit longer, if I maybe, as
yeah,
you said, maybe if I just drive them a little bit harder or whatever, and we hold on to them because we're afraid of having to go and find a replacement.
yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that play into this in the way we teach our teams. Number one, you should always have a bench
Hmm.
of people lined up. You should constantly be interviewing, and I don't mean spending 20 hours a week, but you can also condense that down into doing some group interviews,
Yep.
right? And so you should always be building a bench so that you have a pool of people to pick from. Is number one. And then number two is you're 100% correct. People will, because they don't have a bench, they will hold on to people that they probably shouldn't hold on to for far too long. And then that has a knock-on effect. Another ripple of that is that there will be people on the team underperforming, which sends a message to anybody on the team who is a top performer. Oh, it's okay to not perform. And gradually what happens is you start to, through complacency, really, you start to kill the culture inside of that team. So number one, I would say super important to constantly be building a bench. And number two, do not allow slips in process or numbers or targets to affect the wider team, because it will.
Yeah, and I feel too. There's another area, and I'd like to get your insight, your input on this. Is that human nature is such a funny thing, but we tend to focus so much on people's weaknesses. Like we always want to fix things. We want to say like, "Oh, hey, Jeff, you're great at opening doors and the fantastic, and you can generate opportunities and stuff, but you're not a very good closer, right? So I'm going to spend all my time now focused on trying to make you the best closer." And it may be just something that you're never going to be, right?
Yep.
Whereas maybe there's somebody over here who's a fantastic closer. They're not the greatest door opener. And so instead of going, okay, I'm gonna help Jeff generate the most amount of opportunities, and I'm gonna compensate him on that. Then I'm gonna team him with this other person over here who's a great closer, not a great opener. And I'm going to like really accentuate your strengths, as opposed to waste all this time and energy on trying to fix a weakness that, number one, I'll probably never be able to fix. Two, you don't like. It's not where you want to be, and therefore, at best, you're going to be mediocre at
Yep. The phrase "you can't teach a fish to climb a tree." You know, if you've got a fish, let them swim. If you've
it.
got a you know monkey, let it climb a tree. And you're 100% correct. People try and force unnatural skill sets on people, and I agree with that completely. If you've got somebody who's a great door opener, task them with that. They'll
Mhm.
be happier. You'll
Yep.
get more opportunity. You'll get more closes, and they'll be thriving in a role rather than trying to force a fish to learn how to climb a tree. For
Yeah,
sure, I would
yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, and just finally, what other advice would you have maybe for any organized sales leader who's looking at his organization and wondering why they're underperforming?
For me, it always comes back to culture and KPI.
Mhm. Right.
It's like, are they underperforming because you're allowing them to? Are they underperforming because they don't like being there? Are they underperforming because they feel like they're constantly being whipped? It's all stick and no carrot.
Mhm.
You have to have a healthy balance of the two. But for me, it's always, if a sales leader comes to me and says my team is underperforming, the first person I look at is them, not the team.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. I think your sales leader is your greatest revenue multiplier, because if
Yeah,
they're performing, then the people underneath them will be performing too. Listen, Geoff,
absolutely.
this has been great. All of Jeff's information will be below this video, but before we go, please do tell people a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I work as a fractional sales manager for a multitude of different businesses, online and offline. Essentially, what I do is I can come in on a fractional basis and either help train the existing manager in the strategies that have been very successful in us helping businesses scale to 7, 8, some 9 figures, um, or I can work with the team directly, and that could take the form of sales training and coaching, running meetings, basically helping to install the systems and the culture that we know from experience has caused the biggest gains for the team that we've worked with. That's essentially what we do.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Geoff, for joining us. I know it's later in your day over there. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.